What's good, Rick in here with another little personal finance video, and on today's episode I want to cover the 7 rules for personal finance that can really change your life. And these are kind of a collection of the best rules I found, best principles I found for managing your personal finance. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I'm going to make more detailed videos about each of these things. First and foremost, my number one rule for personal finance is buy index funds instead of individual stocks. I'm always blown away by how many people are buying individual stocks instead of index funds. People really like to think that they know a lot about a specific stock like Apple or Tesla or GE or GM or Ford or whatever it is, and they feel like they have this understanding the market and they know what they're going to buy, and that's exactly what's going to work out really well for them. And in some cases it might, but in other cases it might not. And what we know is, on average, most people are better off buying an index fund, which is a collection of all the stocks in a specific kind of category, putting them all together and buying a small sliver of all of those instead of buying one individual stock of any type. So instead of buying 10 shares of Apple stock, you might be better off spending that same money on an index fund for the S&P 500, which has the 500 largest stocks in the United States. It's a lot safer bet in the long term. So rule number 1, buy index funds instead of individual stocks. Number 2 is save 20% of your income. Before you spend any of it, make sure you take whatever you're earning and save 20% of it. Now, this might seem steep for some people and it might seem low for others. If it seems low, ignore this advice, keep saving what you're already saving. If it seems high, think about it. Saving 20% is really going to put you well on your way towards whatever goals you have. So if you have a goal in mind to retire at a certain age, if you want to go on a trip, whatever that is, saving 20% of your income after taxes is going to make a huge dent, and making a habit of that. One of my favorite Mark Cuban quotes is, if someone told you that your taxes were going to be 90%, you might kick and scream, but at the end of the day, you're going to do it. And if you put yourself in this habit, then no matter what, you're going to save 20%. No matter how stressful it is, no matter how much you want to buy this new gadget, if you force yourself to do it and make a habit of it now, over the course of 10, 20, 30 years, it really adds up. And we'll make another video showing the math behind it, but it really can make a huge difference saving continuously versus trying to play catch up 20 years down the road. So rule number 2, save 20% of your income before you spend any of it. Rule number 3, maximize your tax advantage accounts. So if you're not familiar, there's a number of ways you can avoid paying taxes on investments. So there's tax advantage accounts like a Roth IRA, like an HSA. So these are all different places you can save your money and not pay taxes. There's some sort of benefit. In some cases, you might not pay taxes now. In other cases, you might pay taxes now but not pay taxes down the road. Whatever the case is, there's some huge benefits to saving money in there. So an HSA, for example, is a way for you to save money every single year, put money aside for your health costs down the road, and you don't pay taxes on that. Similarly with a Roth IRA, you'll pay taxes right now on the money you set aside, but then in 30 or 40 years, whenever you pull that money out for your retirement, you don't pay any taxes on it then. So even though that money is grown, you're not paying any taxes on that growth. So there's a huge benefit to putting that money in tax advantage accounts. What you should really do is look at kind of what ones are applicable to you and then consider them. So a couple of different common ones are maybe a 529 plan, an HSA, Roth IRA. They're also common tax advantage accounts that a lot of people don't think about. So it's one thing to put your money in a bank account and let it grow that way, or just invest in a stock market that way. But using these accounts will allow you to shave off that tax. Rule number 4, principle number 4, don't borrow money. Unless if maybe you need to for your house or maybe you need to for school. Those are kind of 2 examples where you might really do kind of the math on that. But for the most part, don't borrow money. Anything less than that, those 2 amounts, you're almost always better off paying cash. Even if it seems enticing to use a low-cost financing on a car, if it makes sense to low-cost finance an electronic you own, it almost never works out in the long term. It almost always adds stress, it adds fees. There's a lot of things that add into that. When it comes to mortgages and student loans, those are things that you might not be able to avoid, but you should really be kind of wise about that. Think through it. I think the smartest way is to obviously pay cash for those things, but we know that most people will not pay cash for their houses. That's just something that in this day and age is pretty difficult to do, especially if you live in a city where you know that the cost of housing is something that you really can't afford. But you got to think through that. Minimize what you can. Make sure you're getting a 10 or 15-year mortgage on your house and not a 30-year mortgage on it. Make sure you're putting down at least 20% when you're buying these places. Same thing with student loans. Borrow only what you need. Make sure you can pay that off in a couple of years of graduating. So if you're going to borrow money, make sure it's in a major that has good job prospects. Make sure you can kind of pay that off in 5 or 6 years after graduating, and you're not going to have student loans well into your 60s. I just read today over 3 million Americans over the age of 60 still have student loans. Don't let that be you. One of the big things with student loans is they're not bankruptable. So if you're borrowing money for a student loan, you can never bankrupt that. No matter what, it's going to stick with you. So even if you're 18 or 17 making this decision, think through it. You might not need to spend 60 grand a year because going to the state school is going to get you a way better value. But overall, the general goal here is just avoid debt whenever possible, because even if it seems cheap in the short term, it almost always adds up to more. Again, there's some macro things you can kind of debate, but for the small things in life, when it comes to phones, electronics, cars, appliances, financing that stuff almost never ever makes sense. Principle number 5, pay off a credit card every single month. One of the craziest things you'll ever pay interest on is a credit card. Credit cards often have 17 to 23% interest rates, and if you are putting any money on there and not paying it off, you're spending way too much money on borrowing money. So if you are using a credit card, which I'm not completely opposed to, make sure you're paying it off every single month. Even 1 month of not paying off your credit card will cost you a lot more than any benefit you're getting from using a credit card. So make sure when using a credit card, you can afford to pay it off every month. I use it essentially like a debit card, and I use a fraction of my limit because I just don't see the need to. I use it as a convenient way instead of using physical cash, but I always intend to pay that credit card off every single month. Rule number 6, have a $1,000 emergency fund. Now, it might seem kind of crazy to just have $1,000 sitting around that's not doing anything, but there's a lot of things that we kind of think of as shocks to us that cost us a lot more. For example, if your car breaks down and you need a $300 repair and you don't have that, and if you finance that, that's going to cost you a lot more than if you had $1,000 in the bank just earning interest. I grew up in a family where my parents often always moved money out of their checking account and put it straight to savings. And that means you're one bounce check away from getting a $25 or a $50 fee. So having $1,000 just sitting in that checking account that you're not really using, that you have for emergencies, is tremendously valuable. That means if your phone breaks, and we kind of talked about this in a different video, if your phone breaks, you can kind of use cold hard cash to buy a used phone for $100 or $200 instead of having to finance a brand new one. Or if your car breaks down, you can afford to pay for it in cash and fix it instead of having to finance a new replacement or finance that repair. So having cash on hand is really, really powerful, and I think a lot of people underestimate that value. You'll always get a better return on that. On top of that, if you have cash in hand, you can negotiate a lot more things. So if I go into a T-Mobile store and try to buy a phone, they're not going to let me really negotiate the price. But if I have cash in hand and I go to Craigslist and I try to buy a phone or buy a laptop, you can negotiate that price down 10, 20%. So one of the best returns you can get is having that cash on hand. When you have cash, you've got that power. There's the old saying, cash is king, and there's a reason for that. So having that emergency fund is really, really important in case if anything does happen, because not only does it kind of allow you to avoid picking up debt, it also gives you a lot more leverage in the different options that you have. Last but not least, rule number 7, don't buy warranties. A lot of people, especially a lot of people who are good about their finances in general, make the mistake of buying warranties. Warranties almost never ever pay off. You're paying a premium to buy this warranty. You might be paying every single month with the hope that if your device fails or if it breaks down, you're going to get a refund. And if you do the math on it, you've got to realize these companies are also trying to make a profit. So what they're doing is they're calculating your demographics. Let's say you're a 22-year-old male, with a phone. How likely are you to break that phone? And on top of that, they're looking at how likely is it for that phone to break. And they're doing the math so that not only can they insure you, but on top of that, in the event that they have to pay out for that, they're still making a profit. So almost every warranty claim is on that. So for most things, day to day, whether it's phones, whether it's appliances, whether it's laptops, you're better off having that money that you pay for warranty set aside in a little emergency fund. And the 1 in 5 or 6 phones you might break, you have that fund now available to you to go out and buy a replacement. Again, there's a very few examples where warranties do make sense. I think my favorite is Doug DeMuro, who's a car guy, bought an extended warranty on his Range Rover, which is a car that is known for failing and breaking down. So in that case, it might make sense, but almost generally, every single warranty in a day-to-day situation is never, ever worth it. That's different from insurance, but general warranties never pay off. Because if you take a car like a Subaru, Subarus are great, they're reliable cars, but there's no point in getting an extended warranty because they know that most of the issues that are going to happen within that 36-month, 36,000-mile warranty period. After that, the odds of something failing that are covered by the warranty are pretty slim. And lastly, even if it does fail, you're going to have a tough time getting this warranty company to actually pay out the claim on that. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of warranties, and what I'd recommend instead is don't spend that money on, but rather save that money and build up your own warranty pool and have that money set aside so that when you do have a car that fails, when you do have a phone or a laptop or an appliance that fails, you have that cash ready to go and you could afford to fix it or buy a replacement or whatever the case is instead of having to try and fight a warranty company to fix it. So there you have it. Those are my 7 rules for finance. Again, those are kind of 7 principles that I really live by, and I think if you follow those 7 principles, you can really change your financial outlook really, really quickly. So I hope that video helped. If you guys have any questions, please go ahead, leave a comment below, shoot me a message. I love talking about this stuff, and I think it's crazy that schools don't talk about this kind of stuff. If you guys enjoyed that video, please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, share it with someone else who needs to see it because I do think this is really important stuff. Again, schools aren't teaching this, and I think these are things that are difficult to have a conversation about, but are really important to talk about.